Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now, we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate sentient beings, please generate the Supreme Bodhicitta before we start today's teaching. Next, I will now talk about poison-destroying Peacock mind training. The first chapter of this treatise has been completed. Now we will continue to discuss the second chapter. The second chapter is also divided into the initial meaning, the true meaning, and the final meaning. It is divided to three aspects. The initial meaning is further separated and categorized into two specific aspects, chapter title and the homage verse. These two have been explained earlier. The true meaning in this context is divided into two parts, which are transforming the five poisons into the path and advising practice. Transforming the five poisons is divided into three main aspects: a general explanation, a more specific explanation, as well as a comprehensive summary of the overall meaning. Among these, the general description and explanation of the five poisons have been talked about in the last class. It includes chapter title and homage verse. We have already finished explaining these, so now let's move forward to the next part. Let's continue together. Actually, the way we divided the first chapter can also be adjusted in this way. Earlier, I split each chapter into 5 sections, but as for the 5 main sections, there are 2 titles here. One of them is probably like a subtitle, that is the peacocks roaming through the jungle of virulent poison, which means peacock walking in the forest of 5 poisons. And the first chapter's title is Following the Life of the Buddha. This chapter is transforming the 5 poisons into the path. Transforming the 5 poisons is also the main content of this chapter. Just now, as for general explanation, specific explanation, and summary, the first part was covered. The second one here on our list, which is called specific explanation. The specific explanation is divided into 5 parts, which are transforming desire, anger, ignorance, jealousy, arrogance into the path, these 5 aspects. Among them, we first discuss transforming desire into the path. In the Tibetan version, this part is missing in our current version. Other versions include this part. The verse is, when the poisonous lake of lustful action boils, if you do not feign lust and behave as others do, there is the danger that the lustful may act ungratefully. With simulated lust, you should destroy this poison. Some of the wording in the Tibetan version is used differently, but perhaps this way is more straightforward and easier to understand, especially for most people to follow. As we all know, we suffering sentient beings in this samsaric world, the 5 poisons of afflictive emotions are extremely serious. Each poison certainly brings serious harm to sentient beings. Precisely because of this, the Buddha has described in the scriptures greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy are called the 5 poisons. Desire, anger, ignorance are the 3 ones. Because poison harms sentient beings, afflictive emotions also harm sentient beings. In this way, we separate these 5 poisons one by one and carefully transform these 5 poisons to the path step by step as instructed. Otherwise, they will bring harm to both ourselves and other sentient beings. First of all, in the desire realm, human craving is extremely severe. It also harms countless sentient beings. So when the dangerous, insidious poison of craving begins to surge forth within you, no one can stop it, especially terrifying, especially for beings with extremely strong craving. When their craving manifests, it is truly frightening. What are the remedies? There are some in Mahayana Buddhism. In the Shravaka path, the method is different. according to Mahayana Buddhism, if this greed is not remedied with something similar to greed, whether it is love or compassion, if you don't go along with them in this way, I'm afraid the greedy ones will do sorts of deluded actions and even commit suicide or create extremely heavy negative karma for themselves, falling into three lower realms. It's truly pitiful. For a bodhisattva who has generated Mahayana bodhicitta, relying on what appears to be having this kind of attachment, fondness, or love for them, is actually simply another skillful means to begin to eradicate the poison within their own mind stream or within the mind stream of others. We actually encounter this in our real lives as well. Of course, this is not suitable for everyone to practice. The poison-destroying peacock mind training and the wheel weapon mind training are Mahayana practices. And this practice is beneficial for Mahayana practitioners who have the ability to directly transform afflictions into the path. If afflictions can't become path and are even very tightly and strictly controlled by the afflictions, those persistent and overwhelming conditions, then greed is simply greed. Anger is just anger without any other methods. So only each individual can truly know their own mind stream. In such cases, for example, in Buddhist history, there were some kings, bodhisattva appearing as a king, who, in the form of a wise king, protected the governance of their country and then spread the Dharma and benefited sentient beings. There are even cases in the world where someone appears to be extremely greedy, yet they use such an appearance to benefit sentient beings. Also, as I mentioned earlier, as previously discussed, the Venerable Saraha, in his Doha Kosa, the word shot is often used. Some people translate it as arrow. Why does he say this? Because when he traveled to the south, he met an arrow maker woman. The arrow maker woman makes arrows every day. While making arrows together with her, he realized the nature of mind. Later, he himself also made arrows. He was an extraordinary pandita at Nalanda monastery. But later, he went back to lay life, making and selling arrows together with the arrow maker woman. Many people slandered him, and even a large angry group of people came to his door to attack him. At that time, he recited a verse in a gentle tone. The monk who has a shaved head is accompanied by an arrow maker woman. He said as a monk, he practiced pure conduct with the arrow maker woman. There is no difference between greed and non-greed, nor between pure and impure thoughts. He makes no distinction between greed and non-greed, nor between pure and impure. Others do not understand this principle, alas. Worldly people are like poisonous snakes. But unfortunately, worldly people do not understand such a truth. Because this is the equality of greed and non-greed, purity and impurity, which is the true nature. But many people in our world, some are bound by their own traditional rules and remain locked within such frameworks all the time. So they simply do not actually know at all. It's really, really pitiful. At that time, he appeared in this way. Among the 80 Mahasiddhas in India, at that time, there was one of his disciples whose name was Shavaripa. Shavaripa also appeared to be like this, at least on the surface. When the Terten master Lera Blingpa was 13 years old, he awakened all kinds of connections to his past life's Dharma treasures. Later, he developed an extraordinary renunciation. He went into the forest and practiced there diligently, continuing his training until he was 19 years old. Afterwards, he received the Vajrakilaya's symbolic script from the mystical Dakinis. Originally, he planned to go to Lhasa to reveal the Dharma, but later, when all the necessary conditions came together, he began to reveal the secret Vajrakilaya Dharma right there locally. Ever since he obtained the Vajrakilaya Dharma, many causes and conditions appeared, and things began to progress much more smoothly and efficiently than they had before. According to the master's biography, we can see that among those spiritual dakinis he accepted, some were truly accomplished dakinis, while some were very bad, even heavily burdened by karma and had poor conduct. He manifested like this to liberate them, Just like in the Buddhanusmriti Samadhi Sagara Sutra, there is a story about the Buddha guiding the prostitute through engaging in desire. Buddhas and bodhisattvas also manifest in such forms. In the great treatise on the perfection of wisdom, also mentioned that an illusionist enjoys the 5 kinds of illusory sensual pleasures. In the same way, bodhisattvas rely on the great power of wisdom to enjoy worldly pleasures. This is also a special method. However, for most ordinary people, that is way above our level. If you try to learn this, you might be able to explain it theoretically, but when it comes to actual practice, it's possible that without even realizing it, you are already under the influence of these powerful desires. And you may find, finally, there's nothing you can do, not to mention liberating sentient beings. You can't even achieve your own liberation. So what exactly is mainly being explained here? Actually, in Mahayana Buddhism, greed, anger, and ignorance, if you can skillfully apply expedient means to work with them, they can be transformed and then used on the path. It doesn't say, as in the Dzogchen teachings of Vajrayana, to directly recognize their true nature. That is not mentioned here. But if you understand the skillful means and their purpose, then it's like how crows simply cannot eat poison, but on the contrary, peacocks can. Although when the peacock eats it, its throat may feel uncomfortable and it experiences some pain. However, compared to the crow, it won't die. There is this difference. This is another unique method to neutralize poison with poison. This is the first, transforming desire into a powerful tool on the journey along the path. Second, simply transforming anger into a tool on the journey along the path.
Zerdang tuk met humbarwa laksin jixenter chutsar maftan na zerdang jengi verchid shido yoda zerdang tavi jabgab jarwal sha.
Next, we use powerful anger as a tool on the path. When the flowers of the poison of hatred come into bloom, if you do not display an angry manner like Yamantaka's, there is the danger that angry persons may create obstacles. With simulated anger, you should kill the demonic enemies. If we talk about these sentient beings, some of them are very greedy, while some have very strong anger. So for some beings, their anger is like a poisonous flower in full bloom. In that case, it may rapidly spread harmful toxic fumes all around, which is extremely frightening. In a poisonous forest, no one dares to enter, which is especially severe. When a person erupts in anger, the sound of their outburst, their facial expressions, and some of their actions may be remembered by those around them for a lifetime. From this, you can see what kind of person they are. So when the poisonous flower of anger blooms, it's terrifying. If you just let them give in to their anger directly, that's not a solution either. If their anger doesn't cause harm, it will gradually die out on its own. But if their anger is actually very harmful to others, then it indeed requires an even stronger action to subdue it. Without manifestation like this wrathful form, Yamantaka, the literal meaning is enemy of Yama, who is extremely powerful among all wrathful deities. If you do not manifest as a wrathful form to guide and transform them in a meaningful way, it's actually very difficult to tame them. It really is. Buddhas and bodhisattvas themselves actually do not have anger at all, but facing wild beings or in front of very violent beings, if you don't manifest wrathfulness, but instead display a peaceful one, it doesn't work. Even when dealing with particularly naughty children, parents at least show some displeasure or display a wrathful expression. This is necessary. Just like in Buddhism, Manjushri Bodhisattva and Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva are the most peaceful deities. But when facing wild beings, if they do not manifest as Hayagriva or Yamantaka, it is also impossible to transform them. Therefore, in front of such beings, it is necessary to manifest as a wrathful Vajra like Yamantaka, which we have talked about earlier. Right now, here at Larunga, most people are diligently practicing the Vajrakilaya sadhana. This is really very good and meaningful. Given this opportunity, everyone should engage in the practice together. Although people outside keep saying that I am the one promoting it, encouraging everyone to recite and practice together, I have not done so actually. because many people have not received the empowerment. If you haven't received the empowerment, it is just like the scriptural evidence cited in the Luminous Treasury. If you practice certain Vajrayana teachings without having received empowerment, you will not attain accomplishment. There are such rather strict statements about this. However, it may be permitted if you are just reciting mantras. If you are practicing this at Larangar, that is very good. If you can join these collective practice, it is best to attain realization this life. If that doesn't come true this life, seek the wrathful Vajra's protection across all lifetimes. Especially in this degenerate age, whether you are practicing yourself or working to uphold and spread the Dharma, it is very necessary to have a yidam with powerful energy to protect you. For example, when Khenpo was just born into this world, at the very moment of his birth, remarkable events were said to have occurred, marking the beginning of his extraordinary life. He was reciting the Vajra Kilaya mantra, Om Vajra Kili Kilaya Hang Pat. Similarly, when His Holiness was born, he was reciting Manjushri mantra. When Khenpo was born, he began to recite Om Vajra Kili Kilaya Hang Fat. Therefore, if in this lifetime we have a particularly special connection in our tradition with the Yidam Vajrakilaya, then in lifetime after lifetime, whether it is our own practice or benefiting sentient beings, we will always have very powerful support and source of reliance. This is extremely important. Otherwise, in this degenerate and impure age, though we wish to benefit sentient beings through peaceful means, it is indeed very difficult. Sometimes, if we always remain peaceful, many worldly people and often non-Buddhists and even many people among us Buddhists, when they see these peaceful individuals, they will start to create various kinds of obstacles for you on purpose. Precisely because of this, the great compassionate merchant at that very moment also became aware of this situation. He realized that many sentient beings were facing harm. So he killed the black man. Actually, Venerable Jigme Lingpa also spoke about this in the Treasury of Merits. If the guru appears wrathful, points out your faults, and scolds you to discipline you, when the time is right, confess and repent. The wise will not be possessed. If you see your guru manifesting a wrathful appearance, you should reproach yourself and recognize that it is your own mistake. This time you should think, now the time has come for my mind stream to mature. I should truly repent. Thus, the wise will not fall under the influence of demons. As it is also mentioned in the words of my perfect teacher, when you see your guru or your Dharma friends, you only see faults in all of them. Just if that's the case, then you're possessed. They don't realize they're possessed, but think someone else is really possessed. They think others are possessed by demons or that others' conduct is not in accordance with the Dharma and so on. Those who studied words of my perfect teacher should be clear about this. No matter if the people show a wrathful appearance, or if during your entire practice they're wrathful deities, it plays an important role in taming some barbaric beings in this turbid world. Without this, it would be very difficult. So in front of these beings, one can display anger if necessary, and it may appear that this person is very fierce, getting angry and so on, but in reality, it is through this method that one subdues external demons and enemies. It's the only way. Take our monastic community, for example. If the administrators were extremely peaceful, some people who are reasonable would listen and follow the rules set by the community. But there are others as well. Peaceful methods are useless to them. There must be someone who appears wrathful. Only when faced with wrath do they recognize their own faults. This is also true in real life. Take the police in various countries nowadays, for example. As a matter of fact, if it weren't for their strict enforcement and truly forceful, decisive actions, there would be no way to deal with some of the more unruly people. So while the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas themselves do not possess anger in their minds, it is necessary. As stated in the Sutra of the King of Great Teachings, it says that Buddhas don't have anger in their nature, but they appear angry for benefiting sentient beings. The Buddhas inherently have no anger in their nature, but for the sake of benefiting sentient beings, they will sometimes manifest to be angry as well. For example, in the Vinaya Sutra, it is also says that once the Buddha took Vajrapani Bodhisattva to the Dragon King's palace, the Dragon King was very disrespectful towards the Buddha. Later, Vajrapani Bodhisattva used his Vajra to destroy all the mountains inside Dragon King Palace. At that point, the Dragon King became obedient and began to gradually take refuge in Shakyamuni Buddha. In real life, as a matter of fact, it is indeed not the case that Buddhism favors anger, nor is it that in monasteries there are many, including some Dharma protectors and wrathful Vajras, that we Buddhists are always fond of practicing these deities holding all kinds of weapons in their hands. However, without these weapons and symbols, it is very difficult to benefit certain sentient beings. That is indeed the case. Therefore, among the Tirthan's treasure revealers of Tibetan Buddhism, among these unique and extraordinarily precious Dharma treasures, the wrathful form of Guru Rinpoche is indispensable. There are great Tirthans. Why are they called great Tirthans? What is the difference between them and ordinary treasure masters? Generally speaking, for a great Tirthan, his Dharma treasures has Padmasambhava practices, both peaceful and wrathful, and Avalokiteshvara practices and Dzogchen teachings. These three are generally all present. Moreover, within the practices of Guru Rinpoche, there is always the practice of the wrathful Vajra form. Treasure Master Lerab Lingpa first began to reveal Dharma. The very first thing he revealed was the wrathful form of Guru Rinpoche. Because of this, in particular, his entire spiritual practice went quite smoothly. Therefore, we also kindly ask everyone to recite at least 10,000 wrathful Padmasambhava mantras every year, or to perhaps chant hum more frequently, or practice the wrathful form of Padmasambhava. It may not work without initiation, but if you have received the empowerment, it's definitely best to engage in this wrathful Padmasambhava practice. Because our Guru, His Holiness, personally transmitted these teachings to us. If we don't practice them, it would be a real pity for us. It's like someone who has gold and silver treasures at home, but his children are not ambitious and don't know the value of those treasures and give them up casually. It would probably be something that would be laughed at. So I think this kind of subjugation practice, hateful mind, looks like hateful mind. In reality, whether in daily life, in our everyday experiences, or in spiritual practice, this wrathful method is extremely important. As a matter of fact, our Vajrakilaya practice truly, in essence, as stated in the biography of the Tirthan Lerab Lingpa, at that time, his own generation was not really particularly flourishing. He said after an era had passed, when it reached the second generation, which between Nepal and the Han region, the Dharma practice of Vajrakila would indeed flourish in the future. So we can see that right now, the Vajrakila practice not just flourishing from Nepal to Han, but should actually be thriving all over the world. Tirthan Lerab Lingpa is the Khenpo Funsok, and the Tirthan Lerab Lingpa are one. They are authentic and true accomplished masters of Vajrakila. We cannot say we are accomplished masters of Vajrakila, but at the very least, we have received a series of blessings. I think this is a very reasonable thing to say, because we are the holders of his lineage, and among the disciples of this lineage, if we did not receive such blessings and realization, it is too unfortunate. It's like a very successful business, but when it comes to the generation of his descendants in particular, and if all his immediate and extended family assets and brands, including various properties, for example, his products and everything else, are all gone, it would be a pity. If the previous generations were so successful, but if in later generations they left nothing at all, and it is too shame for them. So now during current retreat, everyone is practicing hard. There's still about 10 days left about this meditation retreat. I didn't count, but no matter many days are left during the retreat, everyone must attain this kind of, as Padmasambhava said, There are outer signs, inner signs, secret signs of accomplishment. The outer sign is actually the destruction of the 8 worldly concerns and cutting off self-clinging. The inner signs is receiving blessings of the 3 jewels and being gently embraced by the yidam and all the dakinis. The secret signs, this type of innate awareness and primordial wisdom and so on, have emerged. So I think no matter which yidam you are practicing, as long as you practice correctly, you will be able to achieve enlightenment. So when we practice this kind of wrathful yidam, it is not out of hatred. People with bad ties to me, and we want to destroy or eliminate them. Even a momentary thought like that should never arise. Not this method. If you truly have the ability, it is generally considered acceptable. His consciousness can be transferred to the pure realm without such ability, just because he treated me badly. So I must perform a subjugation practice on them, and you may not succeed. Practicing subjugation with anger will not be effective. So we should be guided by bodhicitta at all times to practicing this method of wrathful subjugation practice. Such subjugation in exoteric tradition is just mentioned in text, and no specific practice methods. However, Vajrayana has specific practice methods. This is something we also need to understand, because Mahayana teachings of Buddhism, actually its perspective is extremely profound and vast. In the teachings of Padmasambhava said that his view is broad, and precisely because of this, we are able to accommodate many different kinds of conduct. If our view is not so expansive, then many Mahayana Buddhist doctrines cannot be accepted. We might think that in Buddhism, there was only one who didn't eat after noon, just like in some of the original traditions of Theravada Buddhism. If we can't accept any conduct beyond this, but in reality it is not like that. In the Mahayana doctrines, there truly are all kinds of ways. Many of them are the Buddha's own profound intentions and wisdom. In our practitioners, some of them can genuinely and truly practice Mahayana Buddhism. Such realization and practice, some practitioners can't make it. Many people differ. As for the Buddhist teachings, from the perspective, it should accommodate everything. This is very important perspective. If you realize correct view and you act with this view, if you not realize correct view, yet your actions follow it, it will not succeed and it is unrealistic. Next, the third point, transforming ignorance into the path.
htmik damrzav jarwala murur tabi zochen mafkit na nga si singen namgir digbab sag tok yod htmik tawaram nyamnye gumra sha.
If you do not generate corpse-like forbearance, there is the danger that the evil nature may commit sin when the maya of the poison of ignorance congeals. With pretended ignorance, you should cultivate equanimity, transform ignorance into path. When transform ignorance into path, ignorance is indeed truly like a poisonous quagmire. When it comes to stain you, if we do not have particularly strong patience to practice with, just like a corpse, and a corpse can't move at all, it just remains stiff and motionless, then using this muddy water of ignorance, when you tainted by it, if you do not practice patience like a corpse, I'm afraid these malicious people will still accumulate serious negative karma. Therefore, we should use the approach of ignorance to cultivate equanimity. In 400 verses on the middle way, it is mentioned, just as the body has its body faculty, ignorance is present in every afflictive emotion. But the ignorance referred to here is actually not knowing what to, grasping and abandoning a very foolish, wrong understanding and wrong view. So when affected by wrong views and understanding, if we do not understand the underlying principles, when you are affected by wrong understanding and wrong views, there's no benefit in following them. But sometimes you are not tainted by them. You should have your own independent perspective. Do not let yourself be contaminated by them. Be like a corpse. Just endure it, remain unmoved. Do not go along with it or drift with the tide like a complete fool. If you do this, things could go well. Otherwise, if you follow these things, your own views will gradually be influenced by them, and you will be soaked in this polluted water of corrupted thoughts. It's truly frightening. In the extensive biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, there is one story about who, in a previous life at his causal ground, once became a prince. When he was young, he remembered many of his past lives and his negative karma as king. He thought when he grew up, if he really became king, he would end up committing great sins. So he pretended to be entirely mute and lame. The kind of lame where you can't even walk properly, mute and lame, if I recall correctly. But in the end, he couldn't speak at all. He kept pretending to be mute and disabled. Thus, he later avoided inheriting the throne. Sometimes he pretended to be foolish. Otherwise, if you always just go along with things, it might actually be detrimental to your own spiritual practice. Like I mentioned the other day about Lama Wangde, he is wise in worldly and spiritual. His memory is incredibly good, exceptionally so. In the monastery, if daily chanting Dharma assemblies, this harms his own practices. So he would often pretend not to understand, to be confused. Since he was young, he acted as if he was muddle-headed. That way, he didn't have to casually participate in all kinds of Dharma assemblies and recitations. He just meditated a lot. Sometimes you need what we often call a wise man, often seems simple, right? A kind of appearance somewhat dull, but in reality, he is extremely wise. There are also such examples in Buddhism. Back in the Qing dynasty, there was an emperor named Shanthang who ruled during a significant period, who was Empress Dowager Cixi's husband. After his mother passed away, one night she appeared to him in a dream saying that there's a monastery called Shu Temple, and in this Shu Temple there was an old monk, a monk who raised pigs. You should ask him to perform a ritual to help me transcend. Otherwise, I am now falling into a bad realm. The next day, the emperor sent his ministers, ordering them to invite that monk. When they went to see him, they found the old monk living with many filthy pigs, eating and sleeping with them. They lived there together. The ministers were appalled by what they saw, but they couldn't defy the emperor's order. So they brought him to the imperial palace. At first, he was unwilling to go, but later he performed the flaming mouth ritual to help the emperor's mother transcend. During the ritual, the emperor sat in the middle with the monastic community on both sides, beginning the ceremony. During the ritual, this monk fell asleep right there, snoring loudly. He did not chanting at all. A monk next to him pulled on his robe to keep him from sleeping. Then that night, while sleeping, the emperor dreamed of his mother again. She said, I was pulled from lower realms. The old monk pulled me over. But the other monks pulled on his heavy robe, so I was not able to be liberated. In the future, don't interfere with that monk. Just let him to sleep. The next day, no matter how much he slept, no one bothered him anymore. It seems that his mother had already been liberated. Later, a monk offered him some steamed buns. At that, he said, now, as an old monk of 80 years, I've never received such treatment. Maybe the greater ghosts have attained rebirth in the Pure Land, and the small ghosts can only eat steamed buns and so on. He seemed foolish outwardly, because when everyone else was chanting scriptures, he was there snoring away. Even among all the monks, whether the ordained or lay, there are those who seem foolish, dirty, or lacking in many ways. But in reality, it may be through such way to liberate the sentient beings. Just like the monk Jigong, who appeared as if he couldn't even manage basic personal hygiene, as he didn't care at all. Actually, the level of enlightenment in his mind stream far surpassed that of many others. About that old monk, I remember that his name was like Master Tiguang, disciple of Elder Master Shuyun. I think I mentioned this in a book before. He said that when he was young, he had indeed seen monks of that time. Later, this old monk became the well-known and highly respected national teacher and advisor of Emperor Shenfeng, and was specially bestowed a golden purple alms bowl and kasaya by the emperor at that time. During the Cultural Revolution, it seems those were destroyed and lost. This is also a reliable piece of history. So whether in the Han tradition or the Tibetan tradition, there are some masters, some practitioners who really do seem extremely slow-witted. But in fact, they are just pretending by using this approach in practice. Perhaps they are overcoming their own obstacles, or perhaps it is to avoid persecution from those with malicious intent, or when others do negative karma. If one practices by appearing foolish, then things gradually become more equal. If he cultivates equanimity, it is also beneficial for the other party. Some people in our daily interactions are generally very foolish. They are especially talkative. But those with wisdom are not necessarily like that. They may pretend to be confused or oblivious, no matter what you say to them directly, because in principle, no matter who it is, there could be arguments, people might say something. But those who truly possess wisdom don't necessarily have to make everything clear with words. Actually, among the worldly people, they just do not know. Many sentient beings are truly pitiable. Whether from worldly or transcendent Dharma, in any aspects, one may be rather ignorant. But sentient beings like this, they don't realize their own ignorance, unaware, they're arrogant, don't know that they are jealous. So in front of such people, perhaps some Buddhas and Bodhisattvas take on a slightly different approach. During the Cultural Revolution at that time, many eminent monks and great masters in Tibet, they deliberately pretended to be dumb while they were in prison, and pretending to be a lame, so they engaged the practice in another way and setting themselves apart from others. I heard that our Yangtang Rinpoche was imprisoned there for so many years. Inside the prison, he said that, as he recalled, his lips were often inflamed at that time. He wore a mask and silently recited mantras and so on. On the surface, it seemed like that. But in reality, some of these true great masters, those who help sentient beings, their wisdom actually surpasses that of many other people around them. But in appearance, that's not necessarily the case. Maybe worse than ordinary people. People often feel pity for them. This also happens. So for our Buddhists, in fact, we should still develop wisdom. That's the right thing to do. The phenomena that we see, which some people may greed, some may anger, some are the ignorant, and some see those who are jealous or arrogant. People troubled by the afflictions discussed today, but is this really the case? Sometimes appearances are the truth, and that's reality. But sometimes what you see appears to be so, yet in reality, it might not be the case. So the various meanings discussed in the Buddhism are truly are as vast as the ocean, so incredibly profound and boundless, limitless in every sense. Next, the fourth, transforming jealousy into the path. If you do not distinguish between inside and outside as you would I and you when the tree of the poison of envy is flourishing, there is the danger that non-believers and others may destroy the teaching. Therefore, with simulated envy, you should protect the holy Dharma. Some protected beings and some protected Dharma. In fact, the main thread running through all this, it is for the sake of Dharma and for the sake of benefit. It appears all these 5 poisons are being used for benefit. Jealousy is the same way. About jealousy, which many sentient beings are also entangled in the poisonous tree of jealousy, with especially lush branches and leaves. At such times, if you don't distinguish between yourself and others, between inside and outside, actually, jealousy is also needed within religion. Distinctions must be made between Buddhism and non-Buddhism, and between your sect and mine as well. It's fine not to distinguish profound views, but whenever it becomes necessary, we should distinguish all. This is actually a kind of sense of responsibility. If you don't make any distinctions, if everything is all mixed up in black and white, then in real life, that may also be unreasonable. If you don't, like you and I do, distinguish between a Buddhist and non-Buddhist and you and me, if you don't distinguish anything, then perhaps, because Buddhism is especially fragile, perhaps those of non-Buddhist would actually dare to come here and try to destroy our Buddhism in any way. It really is like this. In nowadays, the altruistic mindset of Mahayana Buddhism is indeed extremely vast. Because of this, there are quite a few ways for non-Buddhists to cause harm. So if that's the case, then it becomes rather dangerous. So on the surface, it may all look like jealousy, want to protect my religion and not allow others to flourish their religions. But in reality, having this kind of distinction between you and me and using this approach to uphold the true Dharma. Actually, when it comes to the true Dharma here, it is benefits people, or it is the method of enlightenment. No matter whether it is found among non-Buddhist or our Buddhism, wherever it exists, you can practice it. Or not only say our Buddhism is superior, not like that. What brings happiness to all beings in the world and frees mind stream from afflictions prevents us from being tormented by suffering in this world. Wherever such a Dharma method exists, that is what we should actively propagate and spread. So as it appears to us, and the Indian Panditas of the past, they often debated with non-Buddhist schools as well. It's still like this today. The Buddhists propagate the Dharma uniquely, and this is also very good. In our commentary on the 7-line prayer, White Lotus, doesn't it also say, after all, then in Nalanda Monastery in India, during debates with non-Buddhist schools, many Buddhist Panditas were defeated at that time. And in the end, Buddhism was always, at that time, the loser must adopt the other's religion. So at this point, when many Panditas were extremely anxious, there was one occasion when many Panditas had the same dream. What did they dream of? The victorious, peaceful Dakini told them that my elder brother, Padmasambhava, is now residing in the cool, dark charnel ground. If you go and sincerely pray to him, I believe he will definitely come to help you. At that time, many Panditas did not know that the cool charnel grounds sit in a place that we humans could not possibly reach. Later, she said again, if you are in the scripture hall and displaying many offerings and use all kinds of drums, gongs, and so on to invite him and recite the 7-line prayer, he will definitely come. Afterwards, they followed the Dakini's instructions. Later, Padmasambhava truly descended from the sky and first debated with them on the Dharma teachings. Then, when they began to compete among themselves using miraculous powers, he used the special treasure casket that was given to him by the lion-faced Dakini to display various miracles and achieved victory. Therefore, as Buddhists, simply when we say all is equal, no need for jealousy. You are the same, and I am the same. This is definitely unreasonable. This includes within our Buddhist community. Yeah, you won first place. You did well on the test. I should catch up with you. I should surpass you at having just a bit of healthy, friendly competition in between. This is necessary. Otherwise, if everything is equal and there is no difference between you and me, your class and my class are the same, all the Dharma teachers are the same. It doesn't matter win an award or not. It doesn't matter. If disciples think so, then there's nothing we can do about our own mind stream. I think I said this before. During Khenpo Depa's studies, there was another Khenpo from a different monastic college. And on the surface, they would compare their achievements a bit. At night, they would secretly watch each other. If one person was reciting, the other saw he memorized, and then go back and make sure to memorize it himself. They would push each other like this. Later, when they were older, they said to each other, having a competitor like that was extremely helpful for their practice. If they hadn't had it, they may have thought they were remarkable and wouldn't have had the chance to improve. So in Buddhism, sometimes this feeling of jealousy can also be seen in two ways. There's jealousy that is a true inner affliction, and it's best not to have that kind of jealousy. Otherwise, it will burn up your own mind stream and bring suffering to others. But if it's a positive kind of jealousy and competition, this is also something that shouldn't be abandoned at all. Now, as we continue our exploration of the various afflictions, it's time to move forward and focus our attention on the next one in the sequence. The fifth affliction is arrogance into the path.
ngarjir tuk ngarjonshang barwala ngarjir tawi potsik mabzong na vdiki sokjim gokuru shenin yod devshir taftin zongla perguru jum
If you do not assume the virile posture that resembles pride, there is the danger that the hosts of demons may deceive you when the tree of the poison of pride comes into bloom. Therefore, with simulated pride, you should uphold the sage's teaching and crush its opponents. When all sentient beings cultivate the tall, poisonous tree of arrogance, sometimes it is compared to an ocean, and sometimes it is likened to a tree. When the poisonous tree of arrogance is especially lush, if we ourselves do not also display a certain posture similar to arrogance, if we don't have this kind of posture, then I'm afraid these demonic beings will engage in all sorts of deceptive actions to begin destroying the Buddha's teachings and also bring suffering to sentient beings. Therefore, we persist in adopting a kind of arrogant manner to protect and uphold the Dharma and to destroy the enemy forces on the opposing side. In other words, the arrogance mentioned here, of course, arrogance is one of the 7 types of arrogance among the 5 afflictions. Among these 7 arrogances, many are impermissible, and especially things like pride of superiority and so on. These are also among the afflictions as well. But when the affliction of arrogance grows particularly strong, sometimes in front of such people, it is also necessary to display a kind of Buddha pride or righteous arrogance, because there are some sentient beings whose mind stream of consciousness is very arrogant. They will never bow to anyone, and no one will give in. They think of themselves as especially remarkable. At such times, one must display an even greater arrogance truly in front of them. Then he starts to destroy. For example, among our Dharma friends, there are some who are very wise, but also a bit arrogant. If in front of them you display an even greater arrogance and wisdom, their arrogance will be completely destroyed. Isn't there always comparison in the world? Arrogance is the attachment of thinking oneself to be the highest, believing oneself to truly be the very best. But in reality, this kind of thinking, actually, Mipham Rinpoche explains this well in teachings, but I won't quote them here at this time. If among a group of arrogant people, you don't use arrogance to destroy their arrogance, then whether it's demons or arrogant people in the world, they truly will tempt and destroy you in the end. That's just how it is. In our world, there are some people. We have divided arrogance into many types. Some people are prideful. Some truly possess the 7 types of arrogance. And some are, for example, some people think their wealth is remarkable. My appearance is amazing. Actually, pride and arrogance are more or less the same thing. Some people think their knowledge is exceptional. Some believe their abilities are extraordinary, and so on. There are many such examples. In front of these people, there are even higher levels. For instance, if you have wisdom, you can manifest the wisdom of the Buddha and see how it compares. If it's about wealth, and they have impressive defiled wealth, tell them about non-defiled wealth. Compare your inner wealth with them. At this point, you can break down the arrogance of others. Arrogance also has its place. Why do Dharma teachers sit on the Dharma throne? In fact, in a certain sense, it is simply a way to break down others' arrogance. In the West countries, people believe that teachers and students should be equal. There is this kind of viewpoint. Actually, they do not show respect to the Dharma and respect to knowledge as well. If he really thinks they are the same, he won't gain anything in his mind stream. Among many Mahayana practitioners, generally speaking, if you don't show respect for the Dharma or your teacher, no matter how many times you listen, you still won't gain any benefit. So in the Vinaya Sutra, it says, if you lack respect for the Dharma and teacher, better not to listen. If you leave, the Buddha said, well done, well done. This is very important. So if we want to receive this kind of knowledge, at least have some respect for him. If we at least have respect, it will help to destroy the arrogance in their mind stream. And there's someone with higher enlightenment or Dharma. Only when they appear before him can he truly accept. Actually, in Buddhist history, I think it is recorded in the Sutra of Wise and Foolish. It is mentioned that Anathapindika was preparing to offer a monastery to the Buddha, to build a monastery for him. But the 6 non-Buddhist teachers wouldn't allow construction. It's just like nowadays, these days, when we want to do something, but we can't get approval. The 6 non-Buddhist teachers wouldn't approve it. When they refused, the Venerable Shariputra and the Subhuti, respectively, were present, and many others negotiated. When they were negotiating, Shariputra made a vow at that time. He thought to himself, if throughout countless eons I practice virtuous deeds, respect parents, and made offerings to Brahmins, ascetics, and so on, if all these merits are indeed complete, I hope that today, when I am present, I can rely on my power and virtue to completely subdue and destroy the arrogance in their mind stream. He made this vow at that time. As a result, when he arrived at the scene, the 6 non-Buddhism out there too. And there were also many other devout Buddhist followers and many of 8 classes of heavenly dragons, because of the power of Shariputra's vow at that time. They all had to do prostrate themselves and being respectfully bowing to him. It was like the green blades of grass were gently and slowly bent over by the wind. They all showed him the utmost respect. This moment, Subhuti was seated on the Dharma throne, and when it came time for them to compete, the 6 non-Buddhist teachers seemed unconvinced. They began to debate with him and compare majestic power. At that time, due to Shariputra's great power of vows, transformations occurred. For example, when the non-Buddhists conjured up an especially large tree, the Buddhist side would immediately create a fierce wind to blow it down. They manifested some particularly beautiful lotus pond with blooming lotuses. Our side would conjure up an elephant which would use its trunk to suck all the water from the pond. In the end, after the competition, they were all completely convinced. They all became especially respectful towards Shariputra. So at that time, the followers of the 6 non-Buddhist teachers, I recall it was over 300 million. All of these followers took refuge respectfully before Shariputra. So in our human world, there are all kinds of mindsets. Some people are not convinced, and when they are unconvinced, you can display a bit of arrogance to protect the true Dharma and to destroy the other side's harmful negative actions. His heart and behavior should be necessary to start destroying. In this way, the propagation of the Buddha's teachings can also ultimately succeed. So within this, we will know that in every verse, there needs to be a main thread. And what is that? Aims to benefit sentient beings and spread Buddha teachings. In this process, sometimes it is especially necessary for the 5 poisons to manifest. Sometimes greed is needed. Sometimes anger is needed. Ignorance is needed, and sometimes jealousy and arrogance are needed. Of course, as I just mentioned, if in our mind stream arises the true greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, jealousy, then you definitely cannot to practice these afflictives. Otherwise, if you do actually practice them, you may harm both yourself and others, and there won't be much benefit. But in some cases, you may not be tainted yourself, yet the other person may not benefit either. It may happen as well. In some cases, the other person gradually receives benefit because at that time you did not engage in such seemingly 5 poison behaviors. It seems the other person has abandoned the 3 jewels or has not done anything meaningful. But for your own mind stream, for the mind stream of a bodhisattva, it brings various kinds of harm. There could be all sorts of situations because depending on the strength of the practitioner's motivation and the level of their enlightenment, they will receive different benefits. In addition, the environment they are in, the capacity of sentient beings are also different and differences in their merit as well. The sentient beings who witness your display of the 5 poisons also have various circumstances. It can't be generalized. This is reasonable, unreasonable. Analyzing it like this may not be very thorough or detailed. So every kind of affliction and every possible form or manifestation of skillful means or wisdom, each one is characterized by its own unique circumstances and situations, which set it apart from the others. Next, in our outline, the general detailed explanation we have mentioned. Now comes the conclusion of the meaning.
Terter ponsog mali ba demmer nang tong yimar tawi nyam ngavdang chawak chig da tsudun lar mavshar tavar zis zavr shu.
The conclusion of transforming all 5 poisons into the path, as mentioned earlier, it would be like this. Thus, the entire mass of poisons should be experienced as if it were an illusion, untrue, something that appears but is empty. Tie up the poisons into the single bond of I and mine, and like a peacock, take it as nourishment. The 5 poisons of greed, anger, ignorance, jealousy, and arrogance mentioned above are actually extremely harmful to sentient beings. It is like a gathering of poisonous armies, which all seem especially terrifying. It is like us, such as today I had greed or felt angry, or today I was caught up in ignorance and felt terrible, and I feel very sad about it. But in reality, there's actually no real need to be so afraid. If we understand this wisdom, and the skillful means to handle it, then in fact these poisons are just paper tigers, not really that scary. There's no actual army with real reality there. Why is that? Because all these dangerous, poisonous demon armies, these armies of toxic afflictions, it's actually not that scary. If we have the opportunity. Just a couple of days ago, I translated a text by Mipham Rinpoche, the renowned Tibetan master, called The Wisdom Sword That Destroys Demons, the precious sword of wisdom that destroys demons. His Holiness taught before, and we have used it in the quintessential drops of wisdom and compassion. But at that time, it was delivered orally, after all. Later, when translating from the verses, it was indeed very good. These 5 poisons, afflictions, every day, the demon king, Mara, shoots 5 arrows at sentient beings, which is the arrow of greed, the arrow of anger. As mentioned above, it seems that ignorance. So here, the arrow of ignorance is actually not among the arrows. There is only the arrow of miserliness. The rest make up the 5 arrows. But these arrows every day shoot to us. Some people recover in 2-3 days, while others are completely destroyed by them. It is this kind of difference. You see, we ordinary people are usually just fine. For 2 or 3 days, I felt extremely angry, and we get angry for no reason. Then 2 or 3 days, jealousy is intense. Then for 2 or 3 days, arrogance becomes overwhelming. The demon king Mara is always watching for these opportunities daily. He has nothing else to do, so every day he shoots these arrows at sentient beings. He's just playfully playing around. So to destroy these arrows from the demon army, we do have a way. What way is that? Actually, these demon armies, if you truly observe them with wisdom, you'll see they are empty, without any entity. They really don't exist. They're just like illusions. Illusory elephants may look terrifying, but in reality, in fact, they have no true entity at all. This isn't something we say casually. In fact, if you truly, not even using great perfection observation, using Mahayana Bodhisattva way to, and looking at the 5 poison through those methods, you'll see that these afflictions really aren't much at all. In that Mipham Rinpoche text, it is start with greed by talking about what it really means, and how does greed's object exist? How does the greedy one exist? And how the relationship between the two arises. Then he goes on to analyze anger and the rest as well. It's a very interesting treatise with about 70 or 80 verses. If we analyze things in this way, then ultimately all these armies of demons, what do they all boil down to in the end? It all comes down to self-attachment. But this self-attachment, whether you examine it through Madhyamaka or Yogacara, when you investigate it, self-attachment is ultimately unfindable. It's really no different at all from the son of a barren woman in any meaningful way. So if we analyze or practice in this way, all these terrifying afflictions of greed, anger, and ignorance turn out to be nothing more than illusions, mirages. They simply do not exist at all. It's just like a magician who conjures up an illusory army. In reality, it simply doesn't exist at all. The afflictions are exactly the same. The Sutra of the Non-Action of All Dharmas also says, like illusions, mirages, and echoes, like dreams and a barren woman's child, all afflictions are thus definitively unobtainable. What are afflictions like? They are like illusions, like mirages, like echoes, like dreams, like the son of a barren woman, greed, anger, ignorance. If you use the eye of wisdom to very carefully observe and search for them, they are ultimately unfindable. This isn't casual, they're unfindable. We are actually generating hatred. When we are feeling jealousy, when we are feeling greed, the moment you observe their true nature, you will understand. It's just that we are a bit ignorant, receiving many teachings, yet we cast them aside. We haven't truly and earnestly put them into practice. If we were to truly practice them, then these worldly afflictions would not be so very frightening at all. So how should we put it in this situation? If we take all these formidable armies of afflictions and observe them carefully with wisdom, they will be empty and appearing without entity, ultimately unobtainable. They resemble dreams and illusions. At the root, the soul comes down to self-attachment. If you observe with the view of no self of persons and phenomena, when you examine in this way, you will see that they don't exist. So this is just like when a peacock eats poisonous plants. Not only does it suffer no harm from them, but they actually become the most nutritious food for it. Its entire plumage gradually becomes more and more beautiful and striking. Its voice becomes more and more melodious, and its whole body becomes healthier and healthier over time. In the same way, for a bodhisattva, a person of wisdom, all afflictions may seem terrifying initially. But if you use special wisdom to work with them, you'll realize, wow, when I first started learning the Shravakayana, these enemies of hatred seemed especially frightening. But now that I truly understand the nature of afflictions, or by using various skillful means to understand these afflictions, actually they aren't so frightening after all. So some of us practitioners, why my mind stream are all have conceptual thoughts, greed, anger, ignorance. I'm so useless. We really want to give up constantly blaming ourselves. Some even pull their hair, some clutch their chests, some even use their fists to hit themselves. But none of these methods really work. If we often pray to the Guru and the Three Jewels, we are ordinary people. And in our minds, all kinds of negative thoughts will definitely arise. But these are also a kind of a test for you. At a certain point, with the blessings of the Guru and the Three Jewels, and by studying Madhyamaka, and if we study these powers of non-jewel prajna ourselves, there should be opportunities to transform these into the path. So for everyone, if you see it as a kind of transition, an adverse condition or a test, there are all sorts of experiences. But in reality, if we look at our vast and boundless world as a whole, the afflictions in one person's mind stream are really insignificant. Others might not know that something troubles you. Wow, I am really suffering today. If people talk individually, that year I faced hardships and I felt really, really upset. But in reality, others don't pay any attention to it at all. Oh, you just ran into some trouble? What kind of trouble? They simply don't care about it. So actually, if your vision just open up a bit more, I believe that you will find that many of the afflictions in this world are indeed appearing without entity. They're unreal. When you truly understand this, many external obstacles, adverse conditions and afflictions will have no way to take advantage of you. Your spiritual practice succeeds. All right, that concludes our lesson for today.
Sonandai tamse thogaya tonne Dharma pase jirgana jirano chupai chupun tholen dra
bandangara badna sadarda bandangara badna sadarda bandangara badna sadarda